So Reg MB just dropped a few hours ago, but I already hit Master Ball with Raichu Y. So let's go over this team and how you can pilot it. Yeah, 4-win streak. We had some stat losses as well, partially my fault, because the team is quite hard to play, I do have to say. So everything starts with the star of the show, Raichu Y. When the ability of Raichu Y was first revealed, I instantly told you, oh my god, I'm so stoked. I am so stoked. This is my goat. And a lot of people were saying this mon is gonna be ass. But I was like, I don't care. This mon is so damn cool. I just want to play with it. So then you ask yourself, how are we going to play it? Obviously, its biggest issue is how frail it is. It basically has the same defenses as Flutter Mane, which is known to be a very frail mon. People were also clowning on the mon because they said, oh, look at this calc. Sucker Punch from King Gambit one-shots it. And of course, they'd be right if EVs didn't exist. But they do. So as you can see, the spread right here is max HP, quite a bit of defense, and then quite a bit of speed. And that quite a bit of speed is crucial because this is the exact stat you need to outspeed Jolly Sneasler. As you can see, my first move right here is Fake Out. So while at first, just, you know, when theorizing, I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna play Zap Cannon, Focus Blast, and Encore, the Fake Out is absolutely crucial. You are basically one of the fastest Fake Outs in the game, and so being able to win these wars against Sneasler is incredible. So I went to exactly the speed stat you need after Mega Evolving to outspeed Jolly Sneasler, and then everything else in bulk. You might think, oh, but what about all of its damage? You know, like 165 or whatever, that's crazy, we should maximize that. Well, while that's somewhat true, because it's so high, it's already doing obscene damage anyway. And because of the no guard ability, we get to play some heinous moves with ridiculous accuracy, with so much BP, honestly, we don't need the extra offense. And if you remember, if you ever played Flutter Mane in Reg F, it was similar there. You had a Flutter Mane who could like Terra Fairy Moonblast and delete stuff, even though you were bold max. And some of them were like Terra Grass, not even Terra Fairying, still Moonblasting and doing real damage, but the extra bulk really made you stick around. And that is the core of this team. This is also why I'm spending so much time explaining this mon right now, because it's so crucial. Like, the whole team started from this. And if you want to prove that this thing still does insane damage, this Focus Blast has one-shot Archaludons. It does insane damage. Our neutrally Zap Cannon does insane damage. And of course, it also paralyzes everything. And that is where the second part of this mon comes in. The paralysis. When I first started building with this mon, I basically had one idea and one idea only. I want to paralyze my opponent's entire team and then wipe them out with Bask. Because Bask normally is slow. And so if I para everything, then I can like nuke them. Here's the issue. The first iteration of this team, and I will show you some gameplay as well, I used the slower Bask, a Mystic Water Bask, and even though I was often paralyzing stuff, I wasn't always paralyzing everything, because some mons just can't be paralyzed, like Garchomp for example, and so I was randomly losing games of that. So while the Bask did stay part of the team, it is no longer Mystic Water. Instead, we went right back to the normal set of Jolly Max Max, and I'm just playing the Scarf version. What is interesting, however, is because we're still paralyzing entire teams, even in Tailwind, this Bask now outspeeds everybody. So your opponent can literally have set up Tailwind, think they're safe, and no, here comes Scarf Bask, still just sweeping through everything. Then they're all paralyzed, and they're all low. This is very important as well. Zap Cannon is going to chip everybody so much that Bask has one-hit KOs, or well, like two-hit KOs, I guess, on every mon in the game. It is no longer like, oh, what if they're resisting last respect? No. Bask is one-shotting every single thing because everyone is already chipped down by our Raichu. So that was the core of the team. That was the crucial part. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to subscribe to this channel. I'm constantly updating you with everything Pokemon Champions. The next mon I realized had to be on this team is my boy, my baby boy. You already know this is my boy. Incin needs to be on all my teams. If he's not on my team, there's something wrong. But this time there's also a really good reason. As you know, ground moves are a big issue for Raichu. And so that means our opponents are almost always going to bring their ground attackers, mostly being Garchomp, Excadrill, and so forth. So Incin is going to make their life hell. Now, that doesn't mean that Raichu is going to live Intimidated Earthquakes, even though I think it did. I think in one of my games, I lived an Intimidated Earthquake from Garchomp with Raichu and was like, huh? Raichu, my goat. But yeah, you shouldn't assume that your Raichu will live Earthquakes after Intimidate. It's more so that you are incentivizing your opponent to bring them, and then Incin makes them worse. And then you need to position your Raichu away from that. Meanwhile, they're playing with shitmons because they were all intimidated. So that's the reason for Incin. Also, Incin is just incredible. And because we're trying to position and pivot quite a bit, because again, Raichu is very, very frail, you are constantly basically babysitting this frail nuke. Incin is just great for that repositioning game. For the item on Incin, I'm running Citrus Berry because it's just the item that comes up the most. Next, we have Garchomp. Now, in the original version of this team, I was actually playing Alolan Ninetales. The idea was cool, Bolt Beam, classic typing combination where electric and ice cover each other very nicely. And because I'm so afraid of ground moves, and especially Garchomp, my Alolan Ninetales could then Blizzard them and then I'd be happy, right? The problem is that Ninetales is ass. Don't get me wrong, I like Ninetales. I've actually competed with Ninetales before. But the problem is that right now there is so much weather, your Ninetales not only has to be well positioned into the thing it's trying to kill, like Garchomp, but you also have to position it around the weather constantly. And then Sneasler is played a lot, so they can Dire Claw you. Ninetales is also not that fast, like it's faster than Garchomp's, but it's not faster than a bunch of other stuff. And so I was actually at the start losing a fair bit because of Ninetales as well. I also won some games because of Ninetales, so it's definitely not wrong. I can definitely see a world where Raichu Ninetales are a real duo. It's just in this particular team, I couldn't quite make it work. I feel like my win rate was like 60-40 or 70-30 or something like that with it. And then once I removed it, the games felt a lot smoother. So this was also part of the team instantly because I realized what's the best way to beat a Garchomp? Another Garchomp. So you can see it's Jolly Max because I basically want to outspeed every Garchomp. If my opponent is Jolly Max, cool, we're gonna speed tie, and if they're not, cool, I'm gonna win. Now what's also important here, and you don't actually see it on the screen, is that we are running Life Orb. So this item, brand new today, is going to allow our Dragon Claws to one-shot other Garchomps. This is something you didn't have before. If you were playing in Reg MA, you were clicking Dragon Claw into Garchomp, it did like 80, and you're like, guess I die from Rough Skin plus a partner plus their own Dragon Claw. So now finally we are getting those one-shots, and that's absolutely crucial because again, Garchomp is the biggest threat to our Raichu Y. Then Rock Slide is now also going to land all those crucial kills on Charizard Y because usually they were adding bulk in order to live Rock Slide, but once you add a Live Orb power on top of that, yeah, you're going to kill him. And then there's Earthquake, just really crucial. Ground coverage is just really, really good. Now these four were always on the team. Like every single iteration of this team has had these four usually. But obviously just one Mega is really weird. If you noticed in MA, eventually every team had two Megas, and this team is definitely one of those as well. The issue with Raichu Y is that there's quite some hate for it. Not necessarily targeted, because no one is currently respecting Raichu Y, but just accidentally there is hate for it. In the form, of course, of mostly ground moves, but also in the form of Sinistcha. Because we're running Zap Cannon Focus Blast, we cannot hit Sinistcha properly basically at all. And so I wanted another Mega that could really cover this weakness. And the solution I came up with is Mega Staraptor. Now this thing is really cool because it also came out today. So I was like, oh, awesome. I get to play with two new Megas. I'm going to, first of all, learn a bunch. I'm going to learn how these interact in the meta and so forth. And then at the same time, I'm going to have way more fun because I have no idea what this thing does. And finally, actually, this really covers Raichu well because first of all, it's flying. So anytime I see my opponent in team preview and I go, oh, they have access to really good ground stuff. My Raichu doesn't look too great here. I get to play Staraptor. And if my opponent has Sinistcha stuff and it looks like they're gonna bring it, cool, I can also Brave Bird that shit. Goodbye. Now this thing got Contrary as an ability, so anytime its stats drop, they instead go up, which means Close Combat is just a bulk buff every time you use it, which is absolutely crazy, right? Your Staraptor can just click Close Combat and it gets buffer, Close Combat, it gets buffer, and the awesome thing is it also gets Roost. So what I was straight up doing, anytime I saw in team preview, damn, Raichu doesn't look too great here, I'm bringing my Staraptor, I start spamming Close Combat. The second I get a little bit low, I just click Roost, and this thing is never, ever, ever dying. Now for the spread, you can see it's Jolly Max because in its Mega form, it's speed tying quite a bit of shit. And also the format is like not developed yet. You know, it's a new format, so anything goes. So I was like, fuck it, max speed, and we'll see if I can go slower eventually. And then a bunch of stuff into bulk. Now, is this a optimal spread? No idea. I just knew I wanted bulk. There's maybe a world where you minus all the attack, put it all into HP, because this thing really wants to live a little bit and then gets bulkier and bulkier and bulkier. This thing is really sticking around the whole time. Now, one thing you will notice about this thing, ability, it says Reckless. And you might think you're out of your mind. Base Staraptor has Intimidate. Why the hell are you not playing Intimidate? I was playing Intimidate at first, and I kept losing because of it. Because, and here's the issue, anytime I wanted to bring Staraptor, my opponent had King Gambit or Annihilate. Remember, if you saw NAIC, 70% of Day 2 teams had a King Gambit. Constantly, there's King Gambits on all the teams. And then now, because Annihilate just came out, everyone's also playing Annihilate. So I think like 80% of the teams I faced on my climb to Master Ball had an Annihilate or a King Gambit. So anytime I saw, damn, Raichu kind of looks bad here, let me play Staraptor. I can't play Staraptor. GG, because it's going to intimidate them and they're going to do a hell of a bunch of damage. So I just decided, fuck Intimidate. I already have Incin anyway. Reckless is not an ability, pretend it's not there. But at least I'm not starting the battle with giving them a Defiant boost. Now, what's also really cool is because it is kind of a setup mon, you know, because like it is click and close combat, which is doing a bunch of damage, but it's also setting up. You also get to play somewhat of a balance game. You can play Staraptor, Incin, Sinistcha, and then the last slot can be Garchomp or Bass. And you're basically playing like Floette Calm Mind stuff, but instead of doing nothing while clicking Calm Mind, you're clicking Close Combat while clicking Calm Mind. So this is a really, really sick mon. Roost is also insane. And so I kind of already told you the last mon, but this last mon is a little bit of a weird one. The reason I say that is because it's Sinistcha, but it was the worst slot on the team for a very long time, and this slot has cycled throughout various different mons as I climbed. So like I said, at first I had a Ninetales Alola. I think it was this slot. I got rid of it, it wasn't working. Then I had a Sinistcha, and I was like, it's fine, but it's not super great either. Let me try another ground resist or immunity. So I put a Pelipper on there, thinking, oh, I'm gonna play, you know, with a secondary rain mode of Bask, that's gonna be cool. Didn't really work well either. Then I tried King Gambit on there, and that's another ground weakness, by the way, but my thinking was, because I have some trouble into Sinistcha, my King Gambit can kind of deal with that better, and at the same time, because Zap Cannon is getting everything so low, the Sucker Punch can actually pick off all the living targets afterwards. Beyond that, I was kind of afraid of the potential for like Gengar Perish stuff, and also just opposing King Gambit can be annoying for my Choice Scarf Bask, so I was like, oh, I have my own Bask. At one point, I also tried Grimmsnarl. Some people have been experimenting with Grimmsnarl next to Contrary Staraptor, because you can Parting Shot your own Staraptor to buff up the attack, and you can Scary Face your own Staraptor to buff its speed. So you can literally just make this raid boss, almost like a Dondozo Staraptor, by attacking it yourself with Grimmsnarl. But I just found it so cheesy, and like a good opponent was playing around it already for some reason, even though it was like hour 2. And so I just found Grim like odd and cheesy. It didn't really let me outplay my opponent, it just let me cheese my opponent. It's possible someone will eventually figure out some Grimmsnarl strategy, specific team that makes it really work extremely well. But as I was playing it, I just felt like, okay, I'm just cheesing my opponent's not really doing much. Finally, I just went back to Sinistcha, but a different set. Like I mentioned before, sometimes an opposing Sinistcha can be a problem for the Raichu. I tried King Gambit for that reason, but I thought, hey, Sinistcha can be a solution for a Sinistcha. So I put Shadow Ball over Trick Room because my team is relatively fast anyway. I didn't need Trick Room, and that kind of just fixed the issue. So now I can just Shadow Ball, Pew Pew, opposing Sinistchas. For the item on Sinistcha, I'm playing the Anti-Dark Berry, whichever one that is. I always forget the names. Kasab. Shadow Ball, modest from a Sinistcha, does real damage, whereas Machagocha is more of a chip. And remember, I've been Zap Cannoning everyone, so Shadow Ball plus Zap Cannon is actually picking up KOs. Now for the spread, I have no idea. I'm pretty sure this is still a Reg H spread. I don't even know if things are maxed out, so don't copy this spread. You can if you want, but I have no like idea what it's actually doing. So as you can see right here, that's the team. Again, one more time with a Raichu, Bask, Incin, Sinnis, Garchomp, and Mega Staraptor. Now real quick in terms of game plans, I really like starting with Raichu, Bask sometimes to just threaten like real damage already. Zap Cannon, Wave Crash genuinely KOs like almost the entire format. And since you have the faster fake out, you're always winning those wars as well. Like Sneasler can't fake out your Raichu because you're faking it out, and it can't fake out your Bask because it's a ghost. Same thing against an Incin. And so they can't really lead like a Sneasler or an Incin because it's getting blown up. But then if they lead King Gambit to nuke Bask, that gets blown up by Focus Blast. And then if you notice, okay, I'm not really in a position to KO, you can always flip turn into Incin or Sinistcha or Garchomp, depending depending on what you need, whilst clicking Zap Cannon, already doing real damage, and starting the Paralysis Train. So very often I will try like Raichu Bask with like Incin Garchomp or Sinus Garchomp. Very rarely I go Raichu Bask, Incin Sinus. When you do this, you have to know you have very limited damage. Raichu, even though it's a damage dealer, it's also kind of a support. And then Incin and Sinus are also supports, even though Sinus is modest, so it can blow up with Shadow Ball as well, and Incin doesn't have bad attack. That is very little damage, so you have to constantly outplay and outposition your opponent if you bring the four together. So usually you try to choose between Incin and Sinus. Sometimes I'll also go like Raichu Garchomp or Incin Garchomp, maybe even Bask Garchomp, but that makes you quite weak to Intimidate, so do watch out when you do that. But those are mostly the Raichu modes. Then another really powerful mode this team has is Garchomp Staraptor, and that is something that I really started doing more around the end of my run. Once this team was a bit more solidified, I noticed, Jesus Christ, if my opponent doesn't have a clear answer to Garchomp Staraptor, I'm probably winning just leading that. The fact that you can just go Earthquake Close Combat, Earthquake Close Combat, Earthquake Close Combat is obscene. Now you can't mindlessly do it, of course you have to see if you're in the position to do it, but if you notice you are, oh my god, it's so strong. And then in the back you can have something like Sinus and Bask to try and heal up your Staraptor and maybe reset Intimidates on your Garchomp, or you can have something like Incin Bask if you sometimes need to pivot more defensively, and then of course clean up with the Bask with Last Respects. So those are mostly the two modes you can do. At first when I was playing the team and when Staraptor still had Intimidate, I even dared to bring both, like Raichu Staraptor. And that was mostly when I noticed my opponent had hate for both and I had to basically pivot on the spot into one or the other. So for example, if I noticed my opponent has a Raichu or my opponent has a Electroshock or Chalodon, you could lead Staraptor and then just pivot it out into Raichu and get the Lightning Rod boost that way. Or vice versa, you let Raichu and they'd have all this ground hate and you just like pivot it back out, put your Staraptor back in, and again, back when that thing still had Intimidate, that was actually very real. Beyond that, because Raichu is a fake outer, it is never horrible. Like, it's still going to fake out while you get to play a normal game. It's just that it's only doing fake out while you play a normal game, so it's not good either. So definitely be careful if you're going to bring both, but maybe in these like 2% of games, it's an option, you know, don't forget that the option exists. Sometimes I also like leading something like Staraptor Bask, because Bask obviously is like a real big threat. Your opponent needs to get out of the way, but as they get out of the way, you can just close combat and get your thing set up. But so usually you try to bring at least one support. It's really, really hard for you to justify going Raichu, Bask, Garchomp, Staraptor. That's very hard. So that's kind of like the rule. Try and have one support at least. So now that you've seen the team, check out some games. So we start off against a Rain team with Pelipper, Arch, and Islet, Bask, Raichu. I'm going to Fake Out and Flip Turn, I believe. Yep. Just keeping that Arch safe. And then the Pelly goes away for a Mega Swampert, or a base Swampert right now. Really cool mon. Mudkip was my very first mon. Basically, the idea was that I didn't want to get a bunch of damage on my Raichu just yet, because he's going to be so crucial in general. I could have Focus Blasted the Arch here as well, but I was afraid of Sash. And then my Bask could break the Sash on the Pelly, but I guess the Pelly is now gone, so that's okay as well. This Flip Turn is going to do a bunch of damage because of Adaptability and Rain. You know, that's quite a bit of stuff. So I'm going to put Incin in here, because that means I can now just Fake Out again. So now this turn is completely safe. I get to click Fake Out on the Swampert, and I get to click Focus Blast on the Arch. And this is where you're really going to see the Raichu Y do 7 billion damage. I love Raichu Y so much. This mon is so cool. I don't know, you know, how great it will end up being this format. I do think MB isn't changing that much about MA, you know, from a first glance. Okay, we see a Protect, obviously, and then Focus Blast here. I think my opponent doesn't realize yet what's about to happen. This calc is just crazy, you know? Like, Arch, it doesn't have the best special defense. Woo, there we go. It doesn't have the best special defense, but it has good HP, and we're talking about, like, one-shotting without stab. Okay, so they put Sinistcha in, and then this is Still a good situation, you know, I can protect, I can hard swap my Incin to my Sinistcha. As you can see here, we're actually playing on hard mode because we are playing a bunch of supports and not that much damage. So that does lead us to potentially getting RNG'd because we give them so many turns. But it felt like the best plan. So we protect here, and this is actually where we find ourselves in a pin. Because you might think like, oh, how is it a pin? Well, the thing is, if you've been paying attention to the rain turn count, you may notice that if Pelly is to come in here on this Swampert slot, we can fake out and stall. So we can always Matcha Gotcha here, get our Incin in, they swap out because obviously Matcha Gotcha would ruin the Swampert. And so now it might look like not a great situation because obviously Pelipper can do a bunch of damage to our Sinistcha and our Incin. But if you count the rain turns, we're actually safe-ish. So Matcha Gotcha, again, breaking the sash in case there is one, which I do find important, obviously, because Basculegion and Zap Cannon can both one-shot the Pelly. And so now we can click Fake Out on Pelly and Matcha Gotcha. Or Shadow Ball, actually, sorry. Shadow Ball is going to be even better. So we can Fake Out Pelly and Shadow Ball this Sinistcha, which is basically where we want to get, because like I mentioned before, the Sinistcha is the real issue. The Sinistcha is what's stopping me from destroying everything with Raichu, except for Swampert, I guess. But Swampert is getting ruined by Bask, so that's all fine and dandy. So here we get our Shadow Ball up, yup. And so now this was the last rain turn for that Pelly. So that Pelly is in a really weird situation where they have to click Hurricane without weather and it won't even kill Cinny. Yeah, I should always live it, basically. That's the end of rain. Okay, cool. So now there's no Weather Ball fear. I can cleanly parting shot the Pelly slot. So if the Pelly goes out, it's getting parting shotted so I can intimidate the Swampert back. Matcha Gotcha would also actually hit it, so it would do insane damage. But I'm not clicking Matcha Gotcha because the parting shot is actually creating the pin. So here I can Shadow Ball. But then sadly, yeah, the confusion hits. So this now because I basically play so many supports, we are going to have a slower game, and that opens me up to potentially getting RNG'd. So Shadow Ball here should do very, very respectable damage. Yup, almost a one-shot, but not quite fully. And Incin will be leaving the field. And that's basically the pin I was talking about, right? Like, I was always going to be able to deal a bunch of damage to the Sinistcha. And I was always going to be able to parting shot there without getting Weather Balled on my Pelly. So now Raichu comes in, and this is another pin, as you can see, because now I can always Zap Cannon plus Matcha, and no matter which swap happens, I win, unless I die to Hurricane. Right? Like the Confusion Chip, basically. So the Confusion Chip might ruin me here, but even then, I still win. Because I have Bask in the back. Yup, that's fine. Now I get my Incin or Bask. It doesn't even matter. But we're always basically winning. Like every single play is safe from this point onwards. There's, I guess, like one more 50-50 you can play in the end game. But... So Incin in, obviously, because our little Zappy boy might be afraid. There's actually a word where I could have Last Respected Swampert, but I don't think Last Respects actually kills yet, so that's why I didn't. Intimidate cycle the Swampert a little bit. Last Respects the Cinny, so if the Cinny swaps out for Pelly, the Pelly would also vanish. But now we got rid of this guy, so that's perfect. High horsepower, yup, we're living that because of Intimidate. I guess we could always lose to crits, well, to the crit here. Like, if they crit here, we were in trouble. So Pelly comes back in, and we still have a Fake Out. So here, the biggest fear I had was the Tailwind going up, because then Pelly suddenly outspeeds my my Zappy boy as well, and we can't have that. Because obviously the Swampert is intimidated already, so that feels pretty good. It does have Swift Swim, but it's not actually killing my Bask ever here. So I don't remember exactly. I think I'm parting shotting just to get my guy back in. And Last Respect, so he never gets Tailwind. Because again, Tailwind is like the lose condition. If Tailwind goes up, And then maybe Swampert lives the last respects, and then my Zappy boy gets nuked by Pelly. That would be a problem. So Tailwind not going up, that's fine. Last respects going into Pelly. It's possible that even Tailwind going up didn't matter, by the way. I didn't think through it that much, you know, it's just ladder. But it felt like Tailwind was the biggest problem here, potentially. So another Intimidate cycle. And of course, this Swampert is never nuking this Basque, and now they are always losing. So that's a cool win right there, despite the Hurricane Chipperoni. So next we have a Sylveon King Gambit. I think this is one of those Zard Y teams, if I remember correctly. And we're leading the Staraptor Garchomp. So this is a really sick lead here. And here we have a super safe Earthquake plus Brave Bird, because this is always picking up Sylveon, and King Gambit is never hurting us in any way whatsoever. And also this King Gambit is terrified, of course, of close combat. So he's already incentivized to play defensively, but even if he does, he's taking an Earthquake to the face and then always like dying next turn. So this Brave Bird, yeah, he's protecting, cool. And then Brave Bird Earthquake always picks up Sylveon, which is the biggest threat on the board, obviously, because Staraptor and Garchomp are both, you know, weak to fairy stuff. So yeah, we are going to nuke the hell out of Sylveon here. I'm guessing they didn't expect me to do Garchomp Staraptor. Maybe they were trying to cover for something else. Maybe they were thinking of the Sucker Punch calc on like a Raichu or something. I don't know, but yeah, this was not a great world for them as far as leads go. So then they have Basque. So we don't know the item necessarily, but I still think the Basque is never nuking either of them, basically. Like, last respects, 100 base power is not killing. And Staraptor also got a buff already, so this close combat is always safe, because I'm always getting basically like a bulk boost here. Now, he clicks last respects into Garchomp and crits. And that makes the game a whole lot harder. I did want to, you know, show you that sometimes things can go bad. But so now we have we have a close combat buff, so we're now at +1 in defense, which is really solid because it means our Staraptor is not killable. And I put in my Basque. So now I need to win a speed tie, if it is a speed tie. Most people are adamant by now on Basque, which is why I so confidently click last respects. But also, I think like if he crits me and then wins a speed tie on top, cool. Like he's winning anyway. There's nothing I can do about that, so I just accept that. So we get the last respects off, cool. He protects Garchomp, which is pretty normal, of course, but it doesn't matter. Like, this Staraptor is never, ever dying from this point onwards. Like, we're at +1, Garchomp is slower, close combat one-shots King Gambit, unless he's Sash or Chople. So now we can decide to go close combat on the King Gambit, and I decide to do Incin in. This is very hard to punish. You could think that last respects plus close combat was also safe, which it wasn't, because then Rock Slide crits can kill me. Maybe Rock Slide crit still beats me, actually. No, actually it doesn't, because there's a Basque endgame then. Yeah, no, this is safe. So we're nuking this, unless this thing was Sash, actually. If this thing was Sash, there was still a world where he could win then. So Rock Slide, cool, but without a crit. See, look at this pitiful damage. Like, that is just doing nothing. And then now we can fake out and roost, but pretty sure he just gives up here, because obviously, like, we're always winning. Yeah, fake out, roost, and then close combat. But yeah, that's a clean-ish win. Well, clean-ish. The crit made us forced to win the speed tie with Basque if it was a speed tie. Now we have another one of those Talonflame Chomp teams with, I think, a Zard in the back or something like that. We're once again doing the Staraptor Garchomp thing, because Staraptor Garchomp is crazy. And also you can see that, like, they had a Garchomp. They had quite some possible issues for my Raichu Y, so that's why we didn't go for it. Cool, Incinin, double Intimidate. I thought that was safe. I did consider, like, oh, what if they have Will-O-Wisp on Talonflame, you know? But I decided, fuck it. So now we close combat into Garchomp, I'm pretty sure. They protect Talonflame. I don't know why. I guess they were afraid of Rock Slide, but they could just Tailwind and then get Rock Slided. I was just afraid of my Garchomp getting nuked by Dragon Claw. That's why I got rid of my Garchomp here. I thought the Garchomp would be very instrumental in an endgame or something, so I got rid of it. And now my close combat does a bunch of damage to the Garchomp and I get my bulk boost again. So, once more, I just go straight into the Garchomp and I fake out this Talonflame. They run Gardevoir, so they can literally put Gardevoir in here, but I do not care, because again, like, all these bulk boosts is making it to where Hyper Voice wouldn't even be doing that much, right? Like, we're already at +2, I believe? Yes, we're at +2 now. So Hyper Voice is no longer super effective even. So here, I decide I can play around Will-O-Wisp from this point onwards. Like, I can literally just protect and Parting Shot out. And then I never have to fear it because we have Bask in the back. So I'm going to Parting Shot into Gardevoir, so the Hyper Voice definitely doesn't do a bunch of damage. And we are going to get our Bask in. We're going to see also if they even have Will-O-Wisp here, but spoiler alert, they do. So, yep, Will-O-Wisp doesn't matter. Cool, cool, cool. We are going to Hyper Voice any minute now. Yep, okay. Our Incin lives that pretty comfortably. We get our Citrus activation. We Parting Shot out into the Gardevoir, really ensuring that it doesn't do damage. It also incentivizes it to leave, by the way. Like, our Staraptor is never taking damage, ever. This thing is so crazy. I love this Staraptor. So now we can flip turn Talonflame safely. As you can see, they no longer have Gale Wings. So nothing matters. It's always dying to flip turn, and then we can get a Bask endgame with Last Respects into Gardevoir if it's required. They swap out Gardevoir for King Gambit here, which obviously is going to eat a big ol' close combat. Like, obviously I could have also clicked Brave Bird into this Gardevoir, or Wave Crash. So it's not like they are crazy for doing this swap, or Last Respects. Honestly, there's so many things that could have hurt the Gardevoir here, so I get it. They understand that Gardevoir is their potential win con still, but yeah, I'm just clicking close combat straight into the Gardevoir. I did not care. Because I knew that in the end game, my Bask was always beating the Gardevoir anyway, and the Gardevoir was not doing real damage. Obviously, if the Gardevoir had stayed in, I wouldn't have swapped to Garchomp. I would have swapped to Incin. Because Incin had mostly done its job. So, now Gardevoir comes back in, and now we have a super, super safe position here. We can simply click the Brave Bird Earthquake. Like, the same way we blew up the Sylveon last game, we can just blow up the Gardevoir this time. And the King Gambit, no matter what it's clicking, you know, it's also just dead. So, Staraptor, Garchomp, yes, it is a really, really good duo. But don't get me wrong, like, there's plenty of games where Staraptor doesn't look great, and then I simply play my little Raichu Y, and I think I've won, like, in terms of wins, 70% of my games was with Raichu and 30 was with Staraptor. It's just that these games were cool, so I wanted to show you that, yes, this backup mode is very much real, you know, it's not like Staraptor is just here for the thumbnail, like, Staraptor is also putting in some real work here. But yeah, and then we have another win, so that's this game as well. Pew! Finally, my band AAA Void is releasing a new song in 2 weeks. You can pre-save it on Spotify right now.